The grand hall of the Caraxes Empire shone with crystal pillars and walls covered in glowing carvings. Hundreds of alien nobles stood together, their eyes on the high throne where the emperor waited. It was a day of importance, a day that would decide the future of the royal bloodline. Yet a strange silence filled the hall, heavier than the music that played. At the center stood the princess, daughter of the emperor, known across the stars as Princess Scifi. She was not like other royal daughters who smiled and charmed suitors. Scifi was a warrior, trained in the arts of combat since her youth. Her long dark armor gleamed and her golden eyes shone with sharp fire. Many feared her, for she had never lost a duel, not even against generals twice her size. The ceremony was simple in words but heavy in meaning. The emperor had called suitors from across the empire and beyond. Noble houses, commanders, and even foreign envoys came, all with the hope of joining the royal family. To take the princess's hand would mean power, prestige, and a place in history. But there was a problem. No one wanted to step forward. Every suitor stood frozen, their voices caught in their throats. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some looked down. Others stared at the floor. The challenge was too great, the risk too high. Whoever stepped forward had to face the princess's eyes, those eyes that burned with strength and pride. Many, who once dreamed of her hand, now trembled in fear. The emperor's voice echoed through the hall. "Who among you dares step forward? Who claims the honor of standing beside my daughter?" The silence deepened. A noble from the east lowered his head. A commander from the frontier coughed and stepped back. Even those who once bragged about their courage remained still. It was not just Scifi's strength that frightened them, but also her will. She was not a jewel to be owned. She was a storm, and storms did not bow. Princess Scifi stood straight, her expression calm yet proud. Inside, however, a small spark of frustration burned. Was she truly so terrifying that no one would even try? Was her strength only a curse? She folded her arms and waited, knowing the moment would soon turn into shame for the court. Then in the far back of the hall, a figure moved. It was not a grand noble dressed in silk, nor a general in golden armor. It was a human. A simple envoy sent by Earth, a world still considered young among the stars. His name was Daniel, though few in the hall knew or cared. Compared to the towering alien warriors, he looked small, wearing only a plain uniform of blue and white. His steps were steady, but every eye turned toward him in disbelief. Whispers filled the air. "A human," one noble hissed. "Impossible." "He dares," another muttered. "He has no chance," said a commander, smirking. The emperor narrowed his eyes, curious but silent. The court expected Daniel to stop halfway, perhaps to bow and retreat, but the easy human did not stop. Step by step he walked through the center of the hall, passing by nobles who sneered, guards who watched closely, and warriors who whispered in mockery. At last, he reached the dais where the princess stood. Scifi tilted her, head, golden eyes narrowing. She studied the human before her. Unlike the others, his eyes did not carry fear. He looked at her directly, not as if she were a danger, not as if she were a prize, but as if she were simply herself. That was new. That was strange. The hall waited. Everyone expected him to speak grand words, to promise victory, wealth, or glory. Instead, Daniel said nothing. He simply raised his hand, steady and respectful, and offered it to her. Gasps filled the air. Nobles whispered louder, voices rising. "Insult," one shouted. "Arrogance," cried another. "Does he think she will accept this?" But Scifi did not speak. She looked at the hand. No one had ever dared such a simple gesture. Others bowed, others begged, others bragged. Yet this human simply offered his hand as if asking to stand beside her. Not above her, not below her. For a long moment, silence returned. The emperor leaned forward. The guards tensed, ready to remove the human if Scifi rejected him. But the princess did not reject him. She stared into his eyes, searching for weakness, fear, or lies. She found none. Instead, she saw a quiet strength. He was no warrior, no conqueror, yet he carried something else. Resolve, honesty, a kind of courage that did not shout but simply existed. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something rare, curiosity. The hall trembled with the weight of the moment. Everyone knew this was not how the ceremony was supposed to go. Yet the image remained, an alien princess feared by all, and a lone human standing before her, his hand waiting. For the first time in many years, Princess Sarika felt something shift. She was no longer only the fierce warrior princess no one dared claim. She was a woman facing someone who saw her not as a threat or as a prize, but as an equal. And though her hand had not yet moved, the hall already knew. The story of the princess and the human had begun. The great hall remained frozen in silence. The human's hand still hung in the air, steady and patient. Nobles whispered and sneered, but Daniel did not move away. His gaze stayed fixed on Princess Sarika, calm and unwavering. The emperor leaned forward on his throne. His golden crown caught the light, and his sharp eyes studied the scene with interest. No one had ever dared such a bold and simple gesture. Every suitor before had tried to impress Sarika with jewels, promises, or power. This human, however, had done none of that. Sarika finally spoke, her voice deep and strong, echoing across the hall. You step forward when all others step back. Do you not fear me, human? Daniel's voice was quiet, but his words carried clearly. I respect you, princess, but I do not fear you. Why should I fear someone for being strong? The nobles gasped again. Some laughed cruelly. One commander shook his head. Foolish words. He will be destroyed. But Sarika tilted, her head studying him. She saw no trembling in his hand, no hesitation in his stance. Many warriors twice his size had faltered when facing her eyes, yet this human stood calm. You think yourself my equal? She asked, her golden eyes narrowing. Daniel shook his head. No, I am only myself. But I will stand beside you if you let me. That answer was stranger than anything she had expected. He did not claim greatness. He did not lower himself into the dust. He simply stood there, honest and steady. For the first time, Sarika felt her curiosity grow stronger than her pride. Still, her people would not let this moment pass quietly. The emperor raised his hand, silencing the hall. His voice was calm but carried a hidden edge. You are bold, human. But boldness is not enough. If you wish to stand before my daughter, you must prove yourself worthy. The Caraxes Empire does not accept weakness. Daniel bowed his head slightly, respectful yet unafraid. Then give me the chance to prove myself. The emperor's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. He enjoyed courage, even in unlikely forms. So be it. You shall face the trials of worth. If you succeed, you may stand here again. If you fail, you will leave this hall and never return. The crowd cheered, some with excitement, others with mockery. Nobles whispered that the human would not last a single trial. Warriors smirked, eager to see him humiliated. Sarika, however, felt something stir inside her. She had seen countless warriors tested. They came with pride, with arrogance, with greed. But this human came with none of those. She wondered what he might show in the trials. The emperor struck his staff against the ground. The trials begin tomorrow. Guards, take the human to his quarters. 2 armored guards stepped forward. Daniel lowered his hand at last and allowed himself to be led away. He did not look back at the princess, though his calm expression remained. Sarika watched him go, her thoughts turning like a storm. That night, the empire buzzed with talk. Across the capital city, citizens whispered about the human who had dared to take the princess's hand. Some mocked him, saying he would be crushed in the first test. Others admired his courage, though quietly, for fear of angering the nobles. In her private chambers, Sarika removed her armor and stared at her reflection. She remembered the human's eyes. There had been no fear, no flattery, only respect. For years she had been seen as untouchable, too fierce, too sharp. But the human had not stepped back. He had stepped forward, and that thought lingered in her mind. The next morning, the first trial began. The arena was a vast stone circle surrounded by towering walls. Thousands gathered to watch, their cheers and jeers filling the air. The emperor sat on a high balcony, with Scifi at his side, her face calm though her eyes stayed fixed on the arena floor. The first trial was one of endurance. The challenger had to cross the path of blades, a long field filled with shifting, machines swinging arms and sharp obstacles. No weapon was allowed. Only wit, balance, and stamina would carry a challenger across. When Daniel entered the arena, the crowd laughed loudly. Compared to the towering alien warriors who usually faced such trials, he looked small and fragile. Some shouted insults, others bets on how quickly he would fall. The signal was given. The trial began. Daniel moved forward slowly, carefully. Where alien warriors had rushed with brute strength, he studied each obstacle before stepping. A swinging blade came down. He ducked just in time. A platform tilted beneath his feet. He shifted his weight and steadied himself. His movements were not powerful, but they were calm and thoughtful. The crowd grew quieter as he progressed further than expected. One noble whispered in disbelief, "He is not strong, but he is clever." Halfway through, Daniel stumbled. The crowd roared with laughter, certain he would fail, but instead of panicking, he rolled aside and rose again, his focus sharper than before. Step by step, he crossed the final stretch and stood at the end of the path of blades, breathing hard but unbroken. For the first time, silence filled the arena, followed by scattered applause, not from nobles but from ordinary citizens who admired determination more than brute force. Scifi's golden eyes glimmered with something new. Respect. The emperor leaned back in his throne. "Interesting," he murmured. That night, Daniel rested in his quarters, his body aching but his mind steady. He knew more trials awaited him, each harder than the last. Yet he felt no fear. Somewhere deep inside, he carried a belief stronger than any pain. That courage was not about size, power, or weapons. Courage was about standing when others stepped back. Far above, in her private chamber, Scifi stood by her window, gazing at the stars. For the first time in years, she felt anticipation for what would come. The fierce alien princess, once unwanted, had found someone who dared step forward, and though the trials had only begun, she knew this human was already different from all the rest. The story of Daniel and Scifi was no longer just talk in the hall. It was becoming something greater, and soon the whole empire would see it. The sun rose over the Caraxes Empire, casting a golden glow on the city below. Word of the human's first success had already spread. Citizens whispered in excitement and nobles frowned in disbelief. No human had ever crossed the path of blades, yet Daniel had done it with calm precision. Still, the challenges ahead were far greater. The second trial, the trial of mind, awaited him that morning. It was held in the Hall of Illusions, a vast dome filled with shifting pathways, moving mirrors, and riddles written in the glowing language of the ancients. Every challenger faced not only physical obstacles but puzzles designed to test intelligence, focus, and wisdom. Many had failed this trial, claiming that their minds were as rigid as stone. Daniel stepped into the hall, taking in the strange reflections around him. The mirrors did not simply reflect him, they multiplied him, showing hundreds of images that moved independently. Pathways twisted in impossible angles, and strange symbols glowed on the walls. A wrong step could send him back to the beginning, or worse, trap him in endless repetition until exhaustion took over. The princess watched from above, standing silently beside the emperor. Scifi's golden eyes narrowed, studying the human closely. She had no doubt that his body was strong, but could his mind match the cunning of the Caraxes Empire? The first riddle appeared in glowing letters. "I move without legs. I speak without words. I can lead or mislead. What am I?" Daniel paused, breathing calmly. Many challengers rushed, guessing loudly and failing repeatedly. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. His experiences on Earth had taught him patience. Not all answers were obvious, but careful thought often revealed the solution. "A shadow," he whispered. The letters faded, and the next path opened. The crowd watching from the balcony murmured. Some whispered in amazement, others shook their heads. One noble muttered, "The human surprises us still, but the next trials will break him." Daniel continued, moving carefully. Each section of the hall presented new riddles and illusions. One corridor appeared to stretch endlessly, showing countless doors. He examined each door for clues and noticed small marks near one door's frame. Trusting observation over luck, he chose that door. Inside, the mirrors shifted again, creating images of those who had failed before. He saw reflections of warriors doubled in size, armed with imaginary weapons. The illusions were meant to frighten challengers, but Daniel's heart remained steady. He focused on the path ahead, ignoring shadows that reached for him. Hours passed, though it felt shorter. Every step required thought, patience, and resolve. His mind was tested, but he did not rush. Instead, he used logic and observation, moving steadily. The illusions attempted to confuse him, but his calm mind became a shield. At last, he reached the center of the hall, where a pedestal held a glowing crystal. The Emperor's voice echoed through the dome. "You have reached the center, human. Few have done so before you. Few have proven their minds worthy. Take the crystal, and the trial of mind is complete." Daniel took the crystal carefully. Its light warmed his hands, and a sense of quiet triumph filled him. The crowd erupted in astonished applause, though the nobles' faces remained masked with pride and skepticism. Princess Sarika's lips curved slightly, the first hint of a smile. She admired his calm, steady mind. Many warriors had brute strength. Many had skill in combat, but few had patience, insight, and humility combined. This human, though small in stature, carried qualities she respected. The third trial, the trial of spirit, awaited him the next day. It was held in the Valley of Echoes, a vast canyon surrounded by jagged cliffs. This trial was different. It was not about strength or intellect alone. It tested the heart, the courage to continue when the path seemed impossible, the trust in oneself, and the ability to inspire others. As Daniel entered the valley, he saw the challenge clearly. Large stone platforms floated above deep chasms. Winds howled through the canyon, threatening to unbalance even the strongest warriors. Some platforms rotated, others sank slowly into the mist below. Across the valley, the final platform held a small banner, the sign that the trial was complete. Many challengers had attempted it before and failed. Some turned back out of fear, some fell, and some gave up when exhaustion overcame them. Daniel studied the platforms carefully, testing the wind and observing patterns. He noticed a rhythm in their movement, a subtle timing that revealed when each platform would rise and fall. The first step was the hardest. His foot trembled slightly as he placed it on the edge of the first floating platform. A gust of wind almost knocked him off, but he held fast. Step by step, he moved forward, never rushing, never panicking. From the cliffs above, Sarika watched closely. Her heart beat faster, not from fear for him, but from curiosity and admiration. Every step he took showed courage not through aggression, but through determination. Midway across, the wind grew stronger. Platforms swayed, and the mist below became dizzying. Daniel felt exhaustion, but he focused on his goal. He took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. With patience and trust in his observations, he advanced platform by platform, never losing focus. Halfway through the trial, a sudden challenge arose. One platform began to tilt sharply, threatening to throw him into the chasm. Without hesitation, he grabbed a rope tethered to a nearby cliff and swung himself to the next platform. Some challengers might have panicked, but he remained calm, using quick thinking instead of brute force. By the time he reached the final platform, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the valley. He placed his foot on the last stone and raised his hand, touching the banner. The trial was complete. The crowd above erupted in applause. Even some of the nobles could not hide their admiration. The human had succeeded where many had failed. Princess Sarika descended into the valley to meet him. Her golden eyes glimmered with pride and respect. "You are stronger than I expected," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the wind. "Not in arms, but in spirit. Many would have faltered. You did not." Daniel bowed slightly, his eyes humble but steady. "I only followed what I believed was right. I could not give up." Sarika studied him closely, noting the calm determination in his face. Many warriors had shown strength in battle, but few had the courage to endure. Without fear, without arrogance, without expectation, he was not just brave. He was steady, patient, and honest. The emperor approached, his expression thoughtful. "Human, you have passed the 3 trials: endurance, mind, and spirit. Few have ever come this far. You have proven yourself worthy to stand before my daughter, not as a servant or weakling, but as someone who earns respect." Daniel nodded humbly. "I do not seek to replace anyone, Your Majesty. I only wish to stand with her if she allows it." Sarika looked at him, golden, eyes softening. "You do not ask for power. You do not seek glory. You only step forward honestly. That is rare among those who come before me." For a moment, the valley was silent, filled only with the wind and the distant applause of the crowd. Then Sarika reached out her hand, not to test him, not to challenge, but in quiet acknowledgement. "You have proven yourself human. For now, that is enough." Daniel took her hand gently, not in triumph, but in respect. The gesture carried meaning beyond words. He had faced trials that tested body, mind, and spirit, and he had endured. The human, small in form but vast in courage, had earned his place beside the fierce alien princess. From that moment, whispers spread across the empire. The princess no one wanted had found a human brave enough to step forward. And the story of their journey was only beginning. The morning sun rose over the Caraxes Empire, casting a golden glow on the city walls. Word of Daniel's triumph in the trials of worth had spread across the empire. Citizens spoke of him with admiration, and even some of the nobles could not hide their respect, yet not all were pleased. From beyond the empire's borders, rival clans watched closely. One clan, the Varnok, had long envied the Caraxes' strength and feared the influence of a human standing beside the princess. They saw Daniel's courage not as an achievement, but as a weakness that could be exploited. In the High Council chamber, Sarika stood with her father, the emperor. Maps of distant star systems glowed before them, showing fleets and armies. "The Varnok are moving," the emperor said, voice firm. "They believe we are distracted, weakened by internal matters. They will test us soon." Sarika's golden eyes narrowed. "They will find that underestimating the Caraxes Empire is a grave mistake, and they will see that I do not stand alone." Daniel stood beside her, quiet but attentive. Though not a warrior by nature, he had observed enough to understand the empire's defenses. He had seen the strategy, the patterns of battle, and how warriors moved. "We can't wait for them to strike first," he said. "We need to prepare, strengthen the city, and train together." The emperor nodded slowly. "Very well. Human, your insights will be tested in real battle. Do not fail." Daniel bowed, though his mind was focused and calm. He knew that preparation, intelligence, and teamwork could make up for the difference in raw strength. In the days that followed, Sarika and Daniel moved through the city, inspecting defenses and rallying warriors. The princess's presence inspired her people. Where once the halls were filled with fear of her fierceness, now there was respect and hope. Citizens and soldiers alike watched her, seeing her determination to protect them all. Daniel worked alongside engineers and commanders, suggesting clever adjustments to the defenses. He recommended repositioning energy barriers, adding camouflage to key structures and training squads in coordinated maneuvers. Many were skeptical at first, but as his ideas proved practical and effective, their doubts faded. "I did not think a human could offer such insight," said Commander Rax, a veteran warrior. "But he is clever. He sees what many cannot." Sarika smiled faintly. Strength is not only measured by arms. Courage, strategy, and wisdom are also forms of power. Daniel reminds us of that. Meanwhile, scouts reported that the Varnak fleet had approached the outer system. Ships glimmered like dark stars, moving swiftly and silently. The Varnak intended to test the Caraxes' defenses, hoping to strike fear and hesitation. The day of battle arrived. The city's defenses glowed with energy fields, and warriors stood ready along the walls. Sarika donned her armor, her golden eyes burning with determination. She moved among her soldiers, offering encouragement, checking weapons, and reminding them of the honor they carried. Daniel stood beside her, not as a commander but as a strategist. He had studied the Varnak ships' patterns and knew their weaknesses. He pointed out positions where Caraxes' forces could outmaneuver them, and suggested traps where the Varnak fleet might be slowed or diverted. As the first Varnak ships entered the system, alarms blared. The sky filled with flashes of energy as defense turrets activated. The battle had begun. The fighting was fierce. Varnak ships attacked in waves, testing every wall, every barrier. Many warriors were injured, but they held firm. Sarika led the charge, moving in her own starfighter, striking with unmatched precision. Her golden eyes scanned the battlefield, coordinating attacks and inspiring courage. Daniel stayed in the command center, analyzing data and communicating strategies. His calm instructions allowed warriors to move efficiently, covering weak points and reinforcing lines before the enemy could exploit them. At one point, a large Varnak cruiser broke through the outer barrier, heading straight for the city's energy core. Panic rippled through the defenders, but Daniel remained focused. "Focus your fire on the lower stabilizers," he called. "Sarika, you must lead the strike from above." Sarika nodded. Her fighter leaped into action, weaving through enemy fire. With precision and courage, she struck the cruiser's weak points, causing it to spin out of control and crash into the canyon below. Cheers erupted among the defenders, but there was no time to celebrate. More waves were approaching. The battle continued for hours. The Varnak underestimated the unity of the Caraxes Empire, strengthened by a princess who would not back down, and a human who had earned their trust. Daniel moved through the city, coordinating defenses, moving resources, and ensuring that every warrior knew their role. His calm demeanor kept fear from spreading among the soldiers. In the heat of battle, Sarika's eyes found Daniel. Though they were far apart, she saw the quiet determination in his stance, his clear mind guiding their forces. It was rare to see someone not falter under pressure, and she felt a new kind of respect growing within her. Finally, as the last wave of Varnak ships approached, Daniel spotted a weakness. Their formation was breaking. He relayed instructions quickly, and Sarika executed a daring maneuver with her squadron. Together, they cut through the remaining enemy fleet, forcing a retreat. The sky cleared, and the city stood victorious. Smoke rose from damaged ships, but the empire had held. Soldiers cheered, citizens celebrated, and even the nobles acknowledged the bravery of both the princess and the human. That evening, Sarika and Daniel walked along the city walls, watching the stars. The battle had ended, but the lessons remained clear. "You did well," Sarika said softly, her golden eyes reflecting the lights of distant stars. "Not just in battle, but in showing our people that courage can come in many forms. Even from a human." Daniel shook his head, smiling faintly. "I only did what I could. You were the true strength. I helped because I could, but you led everyone with courage and wisdom." Sarika's lips curved. "Perhaps together, humans and Caraxes can do more than either could alone." Daniel nodded. The bond formed through trials and battle had grown stronger. Not by conquest or domination, but by trust, respect, and shared determination. The Emperor approached, his expression solemn but approving. "You have both proven yourselves today. The Empire is safe and our people are inspired. Human, you have done more than anyone expected. And Sarika, you have shown that strength is not only in power but in wisdom and courage." The princess and the human exchanged a glance, understanding passing silently between them. A fierce alien princess had found someone brave enough to stand beside her, and a human had earned the respect of an empire. Together they had turned fear into unity, doubt into hope. As the stars shimmered above, the city celebrated, unaware that the bond formed this day would shape not only the future of the empire, but the future of all worlds connected to it. For the first time, both Sarika and Daniel understood that their journey was only beginning, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The city of the Caraxes Empire still glowed with lights of victory. The people celebrated through the night after the Varnock retreat, filling the streets with cheers, songs, and banners. Yet behind the joy lay something greater. The empire had changed. For the first time in many years, the citizens did not whisper about fear or division. They spoke about unity, they spoke about courage, and they spoke about the human who had stood beside their fierce princess. Princess Sarika stood on the highest balcony of the palace, her golden eyes watching the stars. Her armor still bore marks of the battle, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. For years she had carried the burden of being feared, unwanted, untouchable. Now she no longer felt the weight of isolation. Someone had stepped forward, not to claim her as a prize, but to walk beside her with respect. Daniel walked up the long staircase and joined her on the balcony. His uniform was torn in places, but he carried himself with quiet calm. He stood beside her, not too close, not too far, simply enough to show that he belonged. For a moment, neither spoke. They both gazed at the stars, letting silence speak for them. Finally, Sarika broke the quiet. "You are different from anyone I have known. Warriors chase power, nobles chase pride. You chase neither. Why?" Daniel's voice was calm, honest. "Because I believe real strength is not about what you can take. It's about what you can give. You gave everything to protect your people. I only wanted to help." Her golden eyes softened, something rare for the warrior princess. "And in doing so, you gave me something I did not know I needed: trust." The next day, the emperor gathered the court in the great hall once more. The nobles, still proud but less mocking than before, filled the chamber. Citizens watched from beyond the walls, their voices echoing with anticipation. The emperor's voice carried across the hall. "The Varnock came to test us. They believed we were weak, yet we stand stronger than ever, and we owe part of this strength to one who was once seen as nothing more than an outsider, a human." Gasps and murmurs filled the hall. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to admit respect so openly. But the emperor continued firmly. "He faced our trials. He endured where others faltered. He guided us with wisdom in battle. And together with my daughter, he turned doubt into victory." Sarika stepped forward, her golden armor gleaming. She looked across the hall, then at Daniel, who stood calmly in the center. For years she had stood alone during such ceremonies, feared and avoided. But today was different. She spoke with a clear, steady voice. "I have been called fierce. I have been called untouchable. Many feared my strength, but this human did not. He saw me not as a storm to fear or a jewel to claim. He saw me as an equal, and he stood beside me, not only in ceremony, but in trial and in war." The hall grew silent, every word carrying the weight of truth. Sarika turned to Daniel, her golden eyes shining with certainty. "Daniel of Earth, you have proven your courage, your wisdom, and your spirit, and today, before my people, I choose you." The crowd gasped. Whispers surged like waves. Some nobles protested quietly, but their voices were drowned by the cheers of the citizens beyond the walls. For them, the sight of their princess choosing freely, guided not by tradition or fear but by respect, was powerful. Daniel bowed slightly, his voice steady though his heart was full. "And I choose you, Sarika, not because you are a princess, not because of power, but because you are you, strong, brave, and true." The hall erupted. Some nobles clapped reluctantly, while citizens outside cheered so loudly the sound echoed through the chamber. The emperor rose, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he lifted his staff high. So it shall be. Today, the Caraxes Empire does not only honor strength of arms, but strength of heart. The princess has chosen, and I as emperor give my blessing. The days that followed were filled with celebration. Across the empire, ships lit their skies with trails of light, and cities sang songs of victory and unity. For the first time, humans and Caraxes warriors worked side by side, sharing stories, meals, and laughter. The barriers of fear began to fade, replaced by respect. Sarika and Daniel spent their time moving among the people. Together they visited training grounds, where young warriors now looked up to Daniel's clever ideas as much as Sarika's strength. They visited markets where merchants spoke openly of hope for a future without constant fear of war. Everywhere they went, they saw change. One evening, Sarika asked him quietly, "Do you realize what you have done? You came here as one human, among many powerful houses. Yet now my people see you as a symbol." Daniel smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone. You were always strong. I only reminded them to see it differently." Her lips curved into a rare smile. "Perhaps that is your true strength, not in fighting, not in leading, but in changing how others see the world." But peace did not mean ease. Messages arrived from neighboring empires, some offering alliances, others watching with suspicion. The Varnok, though defeated, were not destroyed. The galaxy remained dangerous, yet Sarika and Daniel stood ready. Together, they trained new warriors in both battle and strategy. They built new defenses, not only of stone and steel, but of trust. And slowly, the empire became not just feared, but respected. The people no longer called Sarika the untouchable princess. Instead, they called her the princess who chose her path. And Daniel, once mocked as an outsider, became known as the human who dared. On the night of the great festival marking their union, the palace glowed with banners and lights. Music filled the air, and warriors stood side by side with citizens celebrating not only victory but a new era. In the center of the hall, Sarika and Daniel walked hand in hand. The crowd watched, not with fear, but with admiration. The gesture that once shocked the empire, when a human dared take the princess's hand, was now a symbol of hope. Sarika raised her voice so all could hear. "Strength is not in standing alone. True strength is in standing together. Today the Caraxes Empire is stronger not because of power or fear, but because of unity," Daniel added, his voice calm but carrying through the hall. "And humanity has learned that courage is not about being the strongest. It is about stepping forward when no one else dares." The hall roared with cheers. Citizens lifted their voices. Warriors raised their blades, and the empire celebrated the dawn of a new chapter. That night, as the festival lights dimmed and the stars shone above, Sarika and Daniel stood once more on the palace balcony. "Do you ever wonder," Sarika asked softly, "how all of this began? That day in the hall, when no one stepped forward but you?" Daniel chuckled quietly. "I only took a step. You were the one who gave me your hand." Her golden eyes shone warmly. "And now together we will take many more steps. For my people, for your people, for the future." They stood side by side, watching the stars. The fierce alien princess and the quiet human who had dared. What began with a single step and a simple gesture had grown into something far greater, a bond that united worlds, inspired hope, and proved once again the truth of humanity's greatest strength. Humans did not conquer through power. They conquered through heart. And so, the story of the princess and the human became legend across the stars.